Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're diving straight into something happening on the Bitcoin network that, well, it might surprise you.
hmm
It's not just about money transfers anymore. We're seeing this surge, really, in non-financial stuff. Data storage, digital collectibles, even these tiny, tiny bits of Bitcoin used in unexpected ways.
Right. And what's really fascinating and what we're digging into is this idea that Satoshi Nakamoto, Bitcoin's creator, might have actually hinted at a way to deal with this.
Exactly. We've been reading Matthew Crowder's piece from Bitcoin University, Satoshi's Secret Cure for Spam, and it really highlights how this maybe theoretical problem is suddenly very real.
We should probably define spam here because it's not like email spam.
Good point. Yeah. In Bitcoin terms, spam refers to using the blockchain for things other than, its main goal,
Hmm.
peer-to-peer digital cash.
So think embedding random data or those NFT-like things, inscriptions, living right there on the chain.
And also this, massive buildup of tiny amounts of Bitcoin. Dust, they call it, almost unusable specks.
The scale is pretty wild. Crowder points out that recently something like 43% of transactions involved inscriptions or used ARP return for data.
43%.
Yeah. And get this, almost half, 49% of all the unspent Bitcoin outputs, the UTXOs, are worth less than 1,000 Satoshis.
Wow. So tiny fragments.
Tiny fragments. And it's not just that they're small. Tracking all of them actually makes the network less efficient. It takes resources.
Okay, so our mission today really is to unpack what this flood of non-financial activity means. Is it just Bitcoin evolving,
Uh-huh.
or is it a genuine risk to its core purpose?
And we really want to look back at Satoshi's original ideas, especially that little cryptic comment about other things we can do, and see how similar issues were handled before. What are the options?
It's interesting because Satoshi wasn't totally unaware that people might try other things besides payments.
No, definitely not. The original design had features for things like escrow, multisig. More complex stuff was baked in from the start.
So he saw potential for more uses, but he also saw the risks, right? Like the network getting swamped with junk data.
Exactly. And his first thought, the main defense mechanism, was fees, transaction fees.
The classic economic argument. Make it cost something and people won't waste space.
Right, discourage frivolous use. But then there's that phrase, there are other things we can do if necessary. That hints at something more, doesn't it?
It really does, like a
How?
plan B. And people started worrying pretty early on.
Yeah, Gavin Indusa, one of the key early developers, he raised this red flag. What if someone tries to embed, like, the entire Library of Congress on the blockchain?
Yeah, turning Bitcoin into this giant, slow, expensive notice board.
And Satoshi's reaction then was still basically, well, fees should make that too expensive.
But as we just saw with those stats, maybe fees aren't the complete answer they were hoped to be. That economic barrier seems a bit leaky right now.
Which leads us right to today. This isn't just theory anymore. We've got actual companies involved. Crowder mentions MARA, Marathon Digital Holdings, big mining operation.
What about them?
Well, they're actively embedding inscriptions in the blocks they mine.
Oh, interesting. So the miners themselves are adding this non-financial data.
Yeah. And Mara has a bit of a history here, too. They were actually the first ones to mine blocks that were AMLOFAC compliant,
Yeah.
basically filtering transactions based on government lists.
Right, I remember that. That caused quite a stir.
It did. So the fact that an entity that previously filtered transactions is now adding what some call spam, it raises questions. Could powerful players start deciding what kind of data is acceptable on Bitcoin?
That's a really important point, and it kind of throws cold water on that simple idea that the free market will just price out the spam.
Exactly. The thinking is, well, as Bitcoin gets used more for money, block space gets more valuable, fees go up, and the non-financial stuff gets squeezed out.
Makes sense on the surface.
But Crowder pushes back. He says, maybe the Bitcoin culture right now doesn't value transaction utility enough. If it's all about holding, speculating, maybe yield, the demand for actual payment space might not rise enough to outbid other uses.
So the hodlers aren't necessarily creating enough fee pressure for everyday payments.
Potentially. And he throws another curveball in there. What about really well-funded groups, like nations, states, intelligence agencies?
But they care.
They might have strategic reasons to dump data onto the blockchain, even if it's expensive. Maybe to hide messages, ensure their own data is censorship resistant, or just create noise to make tracking harder for others. Their motives might not be economic at all.
Wow, okay. That definitely complicates the fee solve everything argument. It becomes less about efficiency and more about the network's fundamental purpose.
Which makes looking at history even more relevant. How did the community handle stuff like this before? Crowder brings up Satoshi Dice.
Satoshi Dice, 2012, right? Blast from the past. That was huge for a while.
It really was an early gambling app built right on Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And it just dominated transactions. Like a massive percentage of all Bitcoin activity was just this one dice game.
Yeah, I remember people getting annoyed. It felt like it was clogging everything up.
Totally. Many saw it as spam, basically, making it slower and pricier for regular folks to just send Bitcoin. And that led to a pretty significant moment.
What happened?
A developer, Greg Maxwell, came up with a software patch. Now, this wasn't a change to Bitcoin itself, not the core rules.
Oh?
It was software that individual node operators, people running their own Bitcoin software, could choose to install.
Right. So voluntary?
Exactly. And this patch let their nodes essentially ignore Satoshi Dice transactions, just not relay them. And it also filtered out really tiny transactions, anything below 10,000 sats.
So individuals running nodes basically said, nope, not interested in passing this traffic along.
Precisely. It showed that node operators, not just miners, have power over what gets propagated. It wasn't universally loved, though.
I bet. Sounds like censorship to some, maybe. Stopping people using Bitcoin how they want.
That was exactly the debate. Some saw it as censorship. Hey, these are technically valid transactions. You can't just block them.
Makes sense.
But the other side argued, look, it's not censorship. It's about network hygiene. They framed it as node operators making a choice about what their node spends resources on.
Okay, so the argument was, you can still try to send your Satoshi Dice transaction, but my node has the right to just not listen or not pass it on to keep things running smoothly on my end.
Exactly. It's about choosing what you relay and validate locally, a crucial distinction.
That makes the historical precedent really clear.
Right. And now back to Satoshi's cryptic line. There are other things we can do. Crowder's theory is that this is likely what Satoshi meant. These kinds of filters, these node-level controls.
Given the Satoshi Dice example, that interpretation feels pretty strong. It fits the decentralized ethos of individuals making choices, not a central decree.
It does. And Crowder also muses that other things might not just be technical. It could also mean social pressure, community norms.
Like just discouraging certain behaviors, setting expectations for responsible use.
Yeah, think of it like netiquette in the early internet days. Not hard-coded, but culturally enforced. He uses the analogy of email spam filters.
Oh, that's a good one.
We all use them, right? They're optional. You can tweak them. They help manage information flow without fundamentally changing email itself.
Yeah, you don't ban emails, you just filter your inbox. Makes sense. So where does that leave us now?
Well, the article notes that Bitcoin Core Development, the main software implementation, has apparently been hesitant about adding spam filtering features lately, not really wanting to merge pull requests related to it.
So there's a bit of a disconnect. We have this history, Satoshi's hint, but maybe reluctance at the core development level.
Seems that way. And that's where Crowder really makes his call. He's arguing for bringing back that sense of cultural responsibility, using decentralized ways to manage spam.
And pushing back against the idea that any usage, no matter what, is good usage.
Exactly. He quotes Jimmy Song's analogy: if someone sprays graffiti on your house, you don't just give them a designated graffiti wall, you discourage the graffiti itself.
Okay, so it feels like Bitcoin is genuinely at a fork in the road here.
It does. Does it just become this, I don't know, general data chain potentially clogged with non-monetary stuff, making it less reliable for its main purpose?
Or does the community, especially the node runners, take a more active role, using the tools and precedents we've discussed, maybe drawing on Satoshi's hints?
Crowder really emphasizes that the cultural integrity, the shared understanding of what Bitcoin is for, is as important as the code itself.
Right. Okay, so let's quickly recap the key things for you, the listener. First, this spam issue, non-financial data, dust, it's real. It's happening now.
Second, Satoshi himself seemed to know fees might not be the whole story, hinting at these other things.
Third, filtering isn't some crazy new idea. It happened before with Satoshi Dice, driven by the community at the node level.
Which highlights point 4. You, as a node operator, actually have agency. You're not just passively receiving blocks. You choose what you participate in validating and relaying.
And finally, keeping Bitcoin strong as money likely needs more than just hoping the economics work out. It needs community vigilance.
Which brings us to the final thought to leave you with. Given the history, given Satoshi's hints, what role do you think individuals, maybe you if you run a node, should play in guiding the network? How active should users be in protecting Bitcoin from, well, dilution by other uses?
It really cuts to the core of what Bitcoin is meant to be, doesn't it? Definitely something to think about.